Hi, I'm Rosemary J. Kind, and I'm going to read to you from Chapter 1 of Unequal by Birth. For more information about this and my other books, please visit my website, www.rjkind.com. You can also download the prequel to the Flynn and Riley series, The Blight and the Blarney, absolutely free. Unequal by Birth. August 1866. The worn leather boots felt heavier to Daniel than they had done that morning, as he set them by the door to the farmhouse once again. At last his day's labours were done. He stretched his back and bent from side to side. Then he straightened up and sighed. Having positioned the kettle on the range, he took the letter from the table and started to read what was written in Miss Ellie's fine scrawling hand. Then, frowning and shaking his head, he turned the paper over, as though the blank reverse might make more sense. Turning it back, he read it once again. My dearest Molly and Daniel, I hope this letter finds you both well, and that, Molly, you are resting. I dare say that Daniel will be only too happy to work all the harder for as long as you need him to. I know you've another 4 months before your time, but farm work can be heavy, and we wouldn't put a cow to the plough when she was in calf, nor a milking cow come to that. I am sorry to hear what those Reese boys have been a-doing. They can't see their problems are from their own laziness and not the hand of another. If their dear mamma were alive today, she'd be giving them such a hiding for troubling you. I don't suppose it would do any good for me to go reminding them of that. If their daddy hadn't been just the same, their mamma would have had a much better life. Which brings me to the main reason for my letter. Daniel looked up to check the kettle was yet to start steaming and realised Molly was watching him intently. He went back to the letter, trying to take it all in. I know you will understand why I needed to show my support. The suffrage movement here in Dowagiac is much ahead of our own in Pearston, and they have been petitioning for the right to vote alongside their menfolk for some time. It is a fine thing that our country at last recognises all men should be considered as like, but I've worked all my life until now, and pay my taxes as any other. Well, I'm sorry to say that whilst I was cheering my support for the speech being given, by no less a person than Mrs. Dixon herself, a gentleman of the law took hold of my arm, at which point I spoke to him quite sharply with my demands that he unhand me. As Daniel read on, he began to picture his wife's feisty guardian and what lengths she might have gone to. He looked up and said, It would be a brave man who tried to argue with Miss Ellie, and I'm mighty surprised to find that such a man has even tried. He read on. It was at that point I found myself being led to no other place than the courthouse, whereupon I was taken to a cell. I thought only of the other women who are standing together for our cause, as I hear they are doing right across this great country, and not of my own discomfiture at the situation I found myself in. As I sat on the wooden bench, waiting to find how long I should be held there, I thought also of your Daniel, and what horrors he withstood. Daniel shuddered at the recollection, and took a deep breath before being able to read further. I'm pleased to say that it was Mr. Dixon who attended the courthouse, and spoke with the sheriff on my behalf. However, I'm sorry to have to report that due to the sheriff's misguided view of our constitution, I have been granted bail, on condition I appear in the courtroom itself on Thursday week. Whatever would my poor daddy have to say about that? Mr. Dixon says that I should avoid attending any further demonstrations, though I do believe he was looking at me with mock seriousness as he spoke. Your brother, William, sends you his best regards, and has asked me to tell you that he will do all in his power to ensure I am back with you safely in time for your confinement, although I assured him I could take care of myself. Your ever-devoted guardian, Ellie Cochrane. Daniel let out a low whistle. If I hadn't known you all these years, Molly Riley, I'd swear she was your kin and not your guardian. Molly stood before him, hands on hips. And how do you make that one out, husband of mine? He laughed heartily and took her in his arms. Oh, I can see a similarity or two between the pair of you. He brushed her lips with his own, then pulled back. Though I dare say you would have given the sheriff's men even more to think about. Molly raised an eyebrow and looked at him sternly, although with the dancing light in her eyes, and the effect was somewhat spoiled. Daniel began to massage his wife's shoulders. He could not be more proud of all she had achieved in the last year, and whilst of course he had played his part, he counted himself a lucky man for so many reasons. Remembering back to the first time he had met Molly in New York, he began to sing to her. It's about time you were learning some new songs there now, Daniel Flynn, ones that belong to our new country. I know them already, you know I do, but I need to be singing to little Michael the songs my da sang to me. And how do you know it's not going to be Mary after my mother? Molly rolled each shoulder in turn, in time with his singing and the movement of his thumbs. Because that would be a funny name for a boy, so it would. As he said it, he was jolted by a recollection of his Uncle Seamus, so many years ago in Ireland, saying something similar, and he smiled. I despair, Daniel Flynn, to be sure I do. It's men like you. Molly reached forward and took another look at the letter. Granted bail, indeed. She sat back in the chair, resting her hands on her ever-expanding girth. You'll be telling Miss Ellie's calling for you to join her next. Daniel refilled the kettle from the tin pitcher on the bench near the door. You know I can't go now. We've work to do. Harvest is far from over, and if you're to learn all there is to know of farm management, we need me to be working. You're going to have to be ready when my time comes. Well, if the new calf was on his feet in hours, I'm reckoning you and young Michael won't be much longer. Molly sighed and shook her head, the edges of her mouth twitching as she tried to resist the smile playing across her lips. You're the one who really understands it all, Molly. I'm just as happy to do your bidding when it comes to the farm work. I'd rather be in the fresh air than doing sums and numbers. You'll not be saying that when we've no corn for sowing. As Molly paused, apparently ready to continue to berate his tardiness with the books, a scratching at the door caused them both to turn. Daphne? Gertie? Daniel pushed his feet into his boots and opened the door to find, as he thought, the chickens strutting up and down the yard, pecking amongst the dust for any imagined nourishment. Oh my! Molly jumped from her chair. What are the chickens doing out? They should be safely away in the hen house. I'm quite certain I closed the coop after I fed them. Daniel stayed her arm as she reached the door. You rest a while. I'll go. Molly bristled beneath his touch. You think I'm becoming as chicken-brained as Daphne, like any other woman with child might. Molly flushed. Whether through annoyance or embarrassment, Daniel could not tell. He'd heard talk of how her condition might affect a woman, but he hadn't been about to suggest that now. I just meant you need to rest, for young Michael's sake. Oh, will you stop with the Michael thing? I know I closed the coop. I'm going to get our hens in before darkness starts to fall. And before Daniel could say another word, Molly marched past him and into the yard. He shook his head and followed. It would not be like Molly to leave the hen house open. He knew that, pregnant or not. She was meticulous in her farm work. He went around the other side of the yard, driving the chickens ahead of him back to the direction of the coop. It would be dangerous for them to be out as evening fell. With foxes and coyotes about, anything could happen. Quite apart from that, it was harder to find their eggs whenever they chose to lay them around the yard. He was looking down as he walked, carefully watching to ensure none of the hens doubled back, and at the same time trying to count them as he went. He heard a shriek from Molly. The noise was followed by the booming sound of Molly's voice at full but controlled volume. Jacob Rees, Reuben Rees, never mind your poor mamma. You might be a good deal older than me, but if I prove this was you, it will be me who tans your backsides. When Daniel caught up with his wife, she was holding aloft one of the chickens, its neck broken and the head hanging limply down. It might have been an accident. There's many a hen has got her head trapped. This was no accident, Daniel Flynn. This was those Reese boys again, same as the hole in the bucket was the Reese boys, and the well cover was the Reese boys. Miss Ellie bought their daddy's land fair and square, and now they don't like that it's me who's farming it. They wouldn't do anything while Miss Ellie was here, except for name-calling, but that didn't get them far, and neither will this. Thank you. I hoped you enjoyed the reading from Unequal by Birth. I also hope you enjoy reading the rest of the book. Please, when you've read the book, do leave reviews. Reviews really help new readers to find an author's work. Thank you.